Hello everyone, and welcome to This Nintendo Life. We're at episode 46 here. My name is NBZ, and I'm joined, as always, by Bally. Hello Bally, how are you doing?
I'm not doing too bad, Emmy said. I'm all right.
Yeah, just about recovered from some drunken shenanigans.
Heavy weekend.
Yeah.
That's London for you, that's London.
Yep, what are you going to do? When you live in a place where people are going to drink through the early hours, then you just got to, when in Rome, Bally.
Embrace it.
When in Rome, as they say. Today we are going to have a show, as we usually do every couple of weeks, and it's going to be stuff in it. So, Bally, why don't you tell people what the stuff that is going to be in it is?
We're going to talk about some of the games we've played. We've got some of your emails, and, it's been a bit of time since the last one, so we thought we'd bring back the jukebox.
Yes, indeed. So our musically based test each other's brains on where this song came from game.
So I can test your brains, MBZ.
Yeah, it is your turn this time, which I don't know if I'm looking forward to that or not. Who can tell? But
Konami
we shall see.
Racers, honestly, that curveball, eh?
It was fair game. It was fair game.
Well,
so
I've got the curveballs lined up, so here we go.
All right. Okay, so I hope you guys look forward to that in our last segment. But as always, we're going to kick things off with the games we've been playing. So, Bally, how about you tell us the thing that you've been playing?
So, I got Woolly World on launch day, and I've just been. I normally, since we started this podcast, I've been pretty damn good when it comes to, starting a game, playing a game, completing a game. And there have been moments where I've not massively enjoyed certain parts of games, and it's been a bit of a slog at times. But I'm just really struggling to find the motivation to finish this game. And it's a good game, but I just think that it's dull at times, and I'm worried that for example, I was just with Alex the other day, and he wanted to see some of the other sort of Wii U games I own, and I was like, right, well, why don't I show you some other 2D platformers? So I did show him Yoshi, and I don't think he was particularly impressed one way or the other, but then we played just a bit of Bit Trip Runner 2 and a bit of Tropical Freeze, and I just absolutely love those games in comparison to this one, and Alex was the same. He thought Tropical Freeze was a blast to play. And it's just when you play a 2D platformer like those two games, when you compare it back to something like Yoshi, it's obviously a very different style, but it just doesn't appeal to me in the same way. And I've just really found it unappealing to go back to. And I did go back and I've played half of the final world, but the last few levels I've just been like, right, I'll play a couple of levels. And then I don't want to play. I just want to go off and play, Splatoon or listen to a podcast or just anything that's not playing Yoshi's Woolly World. And it's not a healthy situation. And I will finish it, but I just wanted to voice some further concerns that we had from last time about this game.
Yeah, I certainly felt really burned out by the end of it. I did force myself through the last world, and was a bit of a struggle at points, but
the depressing thing is I've only played 11 hours of it, and I'm already oh god, and I feel bad for Americans listening who are jumping out of their seats ready for this game, and we're playing it early and just absolutely slamming it. And I don't want to slam it because it is good. It's just not. It's not addictive in any way, and I think that's probably quite a crucial part of 2D platformers. I mean, both Bit Trip Runner and Tropical Freeze, I completed both of those games so quickly, really enjoyed them, really enjoyed going back to them, and it's this just isn't clicking for me.
I think a key point to make note of is that while you're in a level in Yoshi, I don't feel like if I die, then I want to stop playing the level, because the way that it's set up is smart in that you don't have any lives and that you just reload at the last checkpoint. So you're like, okay, right, I'm just going to keep going and try and get all the collectibles, and if I die, okay, I'll just keep going again. The problem comes is when you finish a level, and then there's all this aftermath where it's like, okay, here are the things you collected. If you got all of the woolen bits, let's pop, 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 pop. Let's show you the Yoshi. Let's show you this animation of the next world appearing. There's a lot of downtime in between levels, and what that gives you the sensation of is like, okay, I have to watch this, I have to wait, and then I'm like, should I go on? Nah, I'm going to turn off my Wii U. And I think that
Yeah.
if they'd done a better job of cleanly getting you from level to level, like they do from death to death within the game, it would have made it a much more streamlined experience, and maybe I wouldn't have felt so kind of burned on it, by the
Yeah,
end.
and like there's loading times and things, and
Oh, I mean, when you boot the game up, it takes forever to load, which
yeah,
is crazy.
and I wouldn't say that the levels in design are longer than a game like Tropical Freeze, but the time it takes to complete them is way longer because the way you explore them is completely different to a game like Tropical Freeze, where it's very much get from A to B as fast as you can. Obviously, there are collectibles in Tropical Freeze, but they're sort of positioned in very different ways, I feel, to a game like Woolly World. And I think it's just made me realize that I do like 2D platformers, but I like a particular style of 2D platformers, and I think I'm just more wary now of perhaps the slower paced, exploration based 2D platformers, you might say.
Yeah.
Although something like a game like Trine 2, that's a very slow paced 2D platformer.
Yeah, but that's really more of a puzzle game, in my
no,
opinion.
you're right, exactly, and that's why I think it is so strong, is that it does have those puzzle elements, and I mean, we've waxed lyrical about that game a lot on the podcast, so I won't go into it. But yeah, you're right. It's just it's very different as well. But so I'm definitely going to complete it for next time, and I might have one or two things to say about the final boss when I get there. But
let's not drag it out. But
let's
see.
not drag out this already dragged out game.
Yes.
But I've also been playing probably the Nintendo classic of all time, to be honest, arguably.
Yeah, the one that, like, really both of us should have played for fucking ever ago, and neither of us really did.
Yeah, like this has been in my I've been meaning to play this since becoming a Nintendo fan, really. And that game is Ocarina of Time. And this is the Ocarina of Time 3D that you previously played and are lending to me now, MBZ.
Yes, my version.
And I'm right up to. I've just finished the Fire Temple.
Yeah, I think that's
so.
it.
I'm thinking the next temple is sort of the Water Temple. So I'm saying I'm like halfway or just past halfway. Maybe.
Oh, you're probably a good 60%.
60%. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think obviously this is a really strong game. I mean, there's a lot been said about this game previously. I think that out of all the 3D Zeldas, this one feels the most like a 2D Zelda turned 3D, and that's probably massively due to the fact that it's the first 3D Zelda. It really does feel, and when I say that, I mean it's not very hand-holdy at all. So I would argue a game like Link to the Past or Link's Awakening, the old 2D Zeldas, they really don't hold your hand at points saying, "Oh, this is where you go next. This is what you do now," etc. It's all working out little nuances here and there of where to go next. And I feel like Ocarina of Time is the same. It doesn't say, "Right, you finished this and now you go here." And I'd say that the other 3D Zeldas, so particularly games like Skyward Sword, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, they really say, right, you've done this dungeon, now you go to this dungeon, now you sail across this sea, now you need to fly over here, now you need to do that, and it's all quite hand-holdy to some degree. Obviously there are hard parts of those games and you're often at odds as to where to go next, but I just feel like Ocarina of Time, it really leaves you out in the cold. And like I was discussing this with you before, MBZ, but those very first Ocarina of Time reviewers, way back in '98, I want to say. Yeah. So like those first few days where they are, having to complete this game without any guides online or anything, I think that's a pretty difficult feat, because I think there's a lot of points in this game that I've come across so far, at least, that you're really like, where do I go next? I have no idea what I'm doing.
Are there any examples of that you can pull on?
I really struggled getting to Jabu's belly.
Oh, okay, yeah.
There's a lot of you have to go through a secret bit from Zora's domain that takes you back out to Lake Hylia to pick up a note, and then you do something with the note I've forgotten already. But there's a lot of toing and throwing, and there's obviously tons of toing and throwing in games like Wind Waker, but I feel like those games give you a lot more hand-holding, a lot more obvious clues to say, yeah, this is where you need to go next. So I don't think the game's worse or better for this. I just think it's different, and I'm enjoying that it's different.
I think an interesting thing about Ocarina is it's much more story driven than any of the previous Zeldas that came before.
Yeah, I'm loving it.
We know we've established in the past that you don't like time travel at all, Bally. So I'm kind of interested in your opinion on how this story kind of lays itself out.
So far, it's basically young Link goes forward in time inside the Temple of Time.
Yes.
So the idea that you're only time traveling inside the Temple of Time and then you're going outside of the world, like I'm not at a point in the story at which it's implied that there are two timelines happening at once. It's basically, this was young Link back then and now you're forward in time. There's not been a lot of back and forth, and it's the back and forth where I feel like time travel breaks down in my mind from a story point of view. And it's the idea of multiple Links existing and doing actions in the same, doing things at the same time in different time compendiums. Compendiums, is that the right word? Dimensions.
I don't know.
Dimensions is the word I was looking for. So, and I know that the story will get there, and that there is more toing and froing back to young Link to come. So, I always have an issue with that kind of thing, but I love the idea of Sheik and how mysterious that all is. Obviously, it's Zelda, I know that, but I would have loved to have played this game not knowing that.
Yeah, it would have been such a cool reveal at the end.
Really cool.
And, like, it's an interesting thing that we really found out about Zelda and Sheik by playing Smash Brothers.
I know, and we'd have massive long debates about Sheik being a boy or a girl.
Oh, we didn't know anything really back then at all. So.
Yeah, so it was weird, but I know I'm really liking the story. It feels epic, and it feels epic almost effortlessly. It feels like it just does it very naturally, whereas I feel like certainly games like Skyward Sword, I'd say, has a lot of sort of inserted epic moments that are like, whoa. And I feel like Ocarina, it's more natural because this is obviously the first 3D Zelda, so they could almost get away with doing something quite epic through very little effort, I guess. But I'm really enjoying it. I really like the art style of the 3DS remake.
Yeah, because they really took what the original artwork for the game was and it basically made that a part of the visual design, whereas in N64 days they tried to, but really didn't have the horsepower to make that possible.
It just looks so vibrant, and the face structures and things look really great. And like, I'd even say that there's elements of the footage we've seen from the Wii U version, Wii U Zelda, that something about the lighting or how vibrant it looks does remind me a lot of the art style they've gone for with this 3D remake. So I'd love to see another 3D Zelda with a very similar style to Ocarina, and because obviously Twilight Princess is so much darker, Wind Waker's doing its own thing, Skyward Sword is arguably doing its own thing as well, and I wouldn't mind if they went back to something as simple and bog standard as Ocarina of Time, because I think what they did with the 3DS version looks great.
Yeah, it's really nice to look at. The 3D is pretty good as well. It was one of the kind of earlier titles, so they were pushing that a bit more.
Yeah, and I think we said this before, but like a game like Pilot Wings as well, those first couple of 3DS games, they're just super deep when you have the 3D turned on full. Like you're really looking into what feels like a very deep box. And this game really feels like that when you're out on Hyrule Field or whatever. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Stretches and stretches for ages.
Yeah, yeah. And like I'm actually finding the dungeons pretty tough. In
terms of like the combat or the puzzle design, or
knowing where to go and combat of non-bosses. The bosses are all right, they're fine, but it's the mini bosses and the enemies in between. They're a lot of them are like hefty duels. They're quite tricky.
Yeah, it's much more like a sword fight where you're waiting for them to expose an opening and then you're going for it. Because you don't really have the moves of Wind Waker where you can parry, or Twilight Princess where you can do the backslash and roll around them. Yeah. It's a much more kind of weight game with
exactly. And I mean, the fighting controls don't feel as slick as a game like Wind Waker or Twilight Princess, but that's understandable. And yeah, just knowing where to go in these dungeons has been pretty tough at times, and I've not even got to the water dungeon.
And that's what's up
temple
next
yet,
for you,
yeah.
is like the ultimate dungeon of where the fuck do I go
Yeah.
next. So
And I've actually managed to do all the dungeons so far, maybe apart from part of Jabu Jabu's Belly without a guide, which I've been pretty chuffed with.
That's good, yeah.
So, and they have taken me a long time. There's been a lot of wandering around. I think I'm like 15, 16, maybe even 18 hours into this game, and yeah, I'm not, like you said, I'm about 60%. So
yeah, a few more dungeons to go. But
so yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. And
have you been using the gyro controls at all for moving the bow and arrow or the
yeah, I have,
boomerang and stuff like
and
that?
it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
I like that, and it's just like Wind Waker HD. It's a really
Yep.
nice implementation, and I really hope that's something they take forward to the Wii U version, whether that's on the Wii U or the NX.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say version as in like a version of Zelda. It's not
Right.
the
when we
next
talk
Wii
of Zelda, that often
Yes.
is a turn of phrase that happens. But
True. But
they
anyway,
know what we mean. They know what we mean, man.
So those are two games I should hopefully try and finish soon. Although Yoshi is just nagging away at my soul. But anyway.
We'll see.
What have you been up to, NBZ?
So I've played loads of different games. I should also mention that
Way too many.
Yeah, I should also mention that I've been back doing the other podcast that I was doing before, the Yo Gamecast with Fizz, and that has started up again.
My nemesis.
Yes, of course, your evil
Arch
enemy.
rival. I am the old NBZ according to Fizz.
Yeah, you are. It truly is the case. And I talked about a few games on there last time, which were Strider and Max the Curse of Brotherhood. 2 Steam games. If you want to hear me give more thoughts on those, go over there.
You need multiple podcasts to spill over to talk about all the games you've been playing.
I know, I played too many, so I played both of those, which are really cool. But what I'm going to talk about today is, I think we'll kick it off with a really interesting small little game that I found out like literally a week ago, and it was because Patrick Klepek, who...
Oh, you found out from him?
Yeah,
Oh,
really.
nice.
He uploaded the video of this game called Ink. And I was like, yeah, you know, sometimes he does these videos where it's like, it's called, the title is Here's a Video Game, and it's just like plays 10 minutes of it or something. But he usually highlights stuff that is kind of unknown, and that's how I found out about Grow Home as well. No one else was talking about it, and he just found it and did a video on it. I was like, oh my god, this looks awesome. So I have a lot of kind of similarities with him when it comes to taste, especially when it comes to platformers.
You love horror games, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's the one difference I would say in his kind of game playing genres as opposed to me.
I'm winding you up.
So anyway, he shows this game. It's basically a Super Meat Boy style-esque thing where you're this little box, but when you double jump, you splatter out ink in all various different colors of the rainbow, and it's all very bright and beautiful. And the way it works is that when you start a level, the screen is completely blank. There's nothing there. But as you go along, the ink that sprays out of you fills in the ledges and the architecture of what's in front of you. And so as you go through the level, you're basically unveiling it as you move through, and there's kind of platforming challenges involved with that. Sometimes you have to stomp on enemies to open up the gate at the end. Sometimes you have to like unlock keys to, you know, get the enemies, and it basically builds on itself over time with complexity. But it's super, super cool. It's just like so colorful and bright, and
It reminds me of those handful of stages from Splatoon where you're spraying onto the invisible platforms.
yeah,
And then you're creating them using your paint. It's just like a 2D version of that idea.
right. It absolutely is. And the great thing about it is these levels are really bite-sized and short, and again, it does the Super Meat Boy thing where if you die, you're instantly restarting, and from level to level, the music doesn't change at all, so it is this like consistent background that keeps you engaged and keeps you wanting to play and play and play. And Patrick actually said in his video it was the sort of thing where he was playing, and then his wife's like, okay, dinner's ready, and he's like, okay, I'm coming. And then like 10 minutes later, she's like, dinner's ready, and he's like, okay, I'm coming. And then like 10 more minutes later, she's like, fucking get to the table now. It is that kind of game where you just don't want to stop because of, and kind of Conversely to Yoshi, where it's like you finish the level and you're like, right, I'm done. You finish a level, you're straight into the next one. There's this overlay of music that continues through, and there's no convenient point at which you're like, okay, I'm going to stop now, to the point at which, like, I played an hour of it and got kind of halfway through, and then the next day I played another hour and finished it. It's like only 2 hours long, very short. There's 75 levels, which is quite a lot, but they're all really kind of bite-sized, so you can chew through them pretty quickly, and it does get quite challenging near the end. And, you have to get into that focus mode of just being like, okay, do this, do this, do this. And the nice thing also is that even if you die, there's parts of the level that you've sprayed stay sprayed, so it's not the sort of thing where you're restarting and having to discover everything again. So you can go for some like trial runs, and just like you can go into the level with the intention of just jumping and splatting for a bunch of times to unlock stuff and find out, what the level looks like, and then you get killed by something, but it's fine because you restart, and you can just go through the stuff that you've already uncovered and make it much faster the second time. So it's super cool. Really neat. It's only like £3.50, and that's why, like, I saw his video, I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to buy this and play it. And it was worth it. It's very much like, we played Box Boy earlier this year, and that's like, that's a really cheap, fun little game, and obviously that game has way more depth than either of us expected it to have, and went on for way longer. This is much more in keeping with that short indie game style, like 2-hour blast through. But it's rivaling Box Boy for me right now, because it's the kind of game that I enjoy more. I really like the puzzling stuff of Box Boy, but for me, that Meat Boy-esque, like super hard, really, really tight controls, and this does have super tight controls, that kind of platforming is my favorite kind of platforming.
Who's it made by, did you say?
It's a really small studio. They're called Zach Bell Games, I think.
Zach Bell.
And,
is that one guy called Zach Bell then?
It might be. I have no idea. It could be just him on his own. And in that case, what a wonderful job he's done, because it's a really cool, smart game.
Thank you, Zach Bell.
Yeah, thank you. It's awesome. So I recommend that if you have a PC and you can play it. It's really like lo-fi. So even if you have like a shitty Mac like Bally does, you could probably play it on that. I wouldn't be surprised. So
whatever.
So there you go. Other than that, I dug into Ghost Trick, which is a game I've been meaning to get to for a really long time. I heard it discussed during 2012, which I think is when it came out, and RFN gave it their Game of the Year. It was James Jones's and Johnny Metz's personal Games of the Year in 2012, and I've been interested in it for a while because it is written by the same guy who's behind the Phoenix Wright series, Shu Takumi, and obviously I love that series, and his writing is fantastic, and all the crazy scenarios he comes up with are amazing. And I don't know, it was just sitting there for ages. I never got round to it, but I finally decided, I think it was when I was down in London, I'd finished Danganronpa, and I started this up. And I got into the first couple of chapters, and then left it for a little bit before I came back to it recently. And I like it. I think it's an interesting premise, and the way it's set up is that you begin the game and you're basically dead out of the gate. You're a guy who's just got shot, and you have no idea why, you have no idea who did it, what the circumstances are, but all of a sudden you're a ghost, and you can now control objects around you, and the bottom screen, the touch screen, is used to basically stylus your way from object to object. Sometimes you can interact with something by, if you're on a tire, you can do what is called a ghost trick and make the tire roll. So basically, it helps you move across the environment and get to other places and stuff like that. And the way it plays out is kind of like a book where it's broken into chapters, and you basically are trying to figure out what the hell has gone on, and figuring out your own murder. And
how does it compare to Phoenix Wright?
Well, I think it's interesting because a lot of the music and the design is very similar. Like the character portraits that pop up are definitely a different art style, but they evoke that Phoenix Wright style, and the music is so Phoenix Wright. I'm like, man, they clearly got the same composer here or something, because the vibe and the tone that it goes for is just right down that alley of being in the courtroom, but it's a different setting. It's a completely different setting, so it kind of stands out in its own right. It's very different game, because in Phoenix Wright, obviously, you're searching for clues and then you're doing this courtroom battle, whereas this is much more like a point-and-click adventure game, like classic PC point-and-click, where you're put into a scenario And essentially the way it works is the power you have is that when you come across someone who has died, you can go back 4 minutes before they died, figure out what happened to them, and then use that time in the 4 minutes to try and stop them from dying, essentially. So this is the power that you have throughout the game, and most chapters revolve around you trying to bring someone back to life, essentially. And so it's kind of, you go through the environment, you figure out what's there, and then most of the time, first time round, you're going to be like, okay, I know what everything does, but I'm not quite sure how to put it all together, and the person ends up dying, and you just rewind again, and then you're like, okay, this time I'm going to try this, see if this works, and maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but you keep basically, it's a lot of trial and error happening, which to some degree I like, but it can also get quite obtuse, where it's like the game has its own internal logic that sometimes it expects you to understand, and at points I've been like, I probably would never have figured that out on my own. And I think that's a lot of criticisms that people have of old adventure games, where it's like, there's this game logic that is so weird that like a human being wouldn't figure this out if they thought about it. But when you do it in the context, it's like, oh, okay, that's how it works. So I have been going to guides like a little bit now and then, but it's really cool. Like, it has this weird art style. It's hard to explain. It's kind of like rotoscoped. It's like not quite 3D polygonal, but it's not 2D either. You really have to like look at a screenshot or watch some video, and I recommend if you're trying to piece it together in your brain right now and not have a clear idea of what it looks like, just look it up on YouTube or something. But it's this really unique, weird art style that they've gone for, and I think it works for the most part, especially the way that the game is built. So I've been enjoying it. I'm almost at the end. I'd say a lot of people hold this in such high regard, and I don't put it quite on that pedestal. Maybe I will when I get to the last few chapters and really figure out what's been going on, because I think the story is a lot of the driving force behind it, and there's been some crazy developments happening so far. And obviously this is the guy who writes Phoenix Wright, so the game is clearly going to have a stupid, ridiculous, bonkers ending, and I'll probably love it eventually. But yeah, I'll see how that turns. Yeah, I mean, go try Ghost Trick, maybe. You can probably find it pretty cheap. It's a cool DS game. I hope they bring it out on the eShop. It's a perfect game for the eShop, actually, for Wii U. It would make a lot of sense.
So infrequent, though, those DS games on the eShop. They're all over the place.
They really are. They really are all over the place.
There's loads of classics that still aren't up on it. So
yeah, the DS has such a vast library that they could pull on that stuff forever and ever and really not run out. So. And I think the final thing I'm going to talk about is Tomb Raider, 2013's Tomb Raider, which is the reboot. And back in the day on PS1, I owned Tomb Raider. I think it was Tomb Raider 3.
Oh, you owned it? I just remember it at Mary's house.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I owned Tomb Raider 3, and I can't remember if you were there. You must have been for like one of my birthdays where I had my PlayStation 1 and we played Star Wars The Phantom Menace Episode 1.
Classic.
What a terribly great game. And I was also, I think I got Tomb Raider 3 for that birthday. And what I remember of that time is sitting there among all our friends, and no one could do anything. Like, the character movements were so awkward, and trying to figure out where to go, what to do, how to play the video game was kind of impossible.
Just give us Mario Party.
Yeah, we just were like so confused, and I don't necessarily think that's because we were children and bad at games. I think those Tomb Raider games are kind of bad, Bally. I think they're kind of terrible video games. So
really, because they were like considered great games at the time, weren't they?
Right, and I think that's the important thing, is at the time they were probably considered amazing. But recently I also watched on Giant Bomb, they do this series called Demo Derby, where they basically grab like a demo disc from the PlayStation era, pop it in, and have to play through it and see what's on there. And they played one of the Tomb Raider games, and man, like, watching some of that and hearing them talk about it, it is ugly, and it does not control well, and very unintuitive. So I just feel like that stuff has aged so poorly, like way worse than lots of N64 games. Like, you can probably go back to Mario 64 and have a good time with it still, even on the original hardware, but I probably wouldn't recommend going back to an old Tomb Raider game. So with that in mind, obviously I'm going into this new Tomb Raider with very different expectations, because obviously this is coming from kind of the Uncharted brand of action adventure game.
They've done away with the tombs.
Well, yeah, kind of, in a weird way. It definitely is much more of a thrill ride, Uncharted-esque adventure. And it's so interesting because this style of game, obviously, like, Tomb Raider is very Indiana Jones influenced. And that is... Like, I feel like there aren't many series that do the same thing, and I think Tomb Raider and Uncharted are really the only two big mainstream ones that do it. And I think, like, I would love it if more games did this kind of, National Treasure, Indiana Jones style adventure, because there's something about it which is really, I don't know, the mystery really gets me, and it's something that I'm really curious about. And I love those movies, and I love the style of game. But obviously, Tomb Raider...
It's incredibly Western, isn't it? It's not something you could ever imagine Nintendo trying.
No, not really. Although I'd love to see their take on this.
I'd love to see that as well. Yeah.
But like the original Tomb Raider obviously influenced Uncharted, and now we're coming full circle where this Tomb Raider is so Uncharted influenced, and it's wonderful because there are loads of amazing set pieces where you're just like falling down a waterfall and then into a plane, and then the glass is cracking, but you have to grab a freaking like parachute at the last second as you crash out, and then you pull the parachute, you're flying through the trees, and it's just like this high-octane ride, Bally, that I don't think you've really had the experience of because you haven't played an Uncharted game or anything in this style.
And I really do want to, borrow Alex's offer that I can just, take his PS3 for a long time and I can get Uncharted's and play them all, and I'm sure I will love them because I have watched your LP of Uncharted 3, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that, and it's just a really cool action game, so... Yeah, I'd love to try it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned before, this Tomb Raider anyway, kind of does away with the tombs for the most part. Now there
it's just
are
called Raider.
Yeah, great. That makes the most sense in the world. There are tombs to some degree in this game, and I wish there were more of them because they're actually my favorite part of the game. They're like secluded areas that you kind of find through, like, they're not very obvious, they're kind of hidden and out of the way, but if you find one, you like go deep into it and you do a puzzle, and there's no enemy combat, there's nothing like that, it's just you in a space, environmental puzzle solving. And that's like one of my favorite aspects of the Zelda games in dungeons, where you're using the environment to figure things out. And Tomb Raider does like quite a bit of that in these little sections. It's just a shame there aren't more of them, and obviously they're all optional. Like, there's no forced section of going through a puzzle area, which means a lot of people are probably going to miss these. And I remember watching Total Biscuit's video of this back when it came out, and he's the sort of guy who doesn't like puzzles at all. He hates them, and so he was kind of praising the fact that Tomb Raider kind of took that stuff away and made it more optional. Whereas for me, I'm the complete opposite, where I'm like, I really wish they'd done more with this stuff, because there's a satisfaction to figuring stuff out in the environment and basically unlocking something. Like, there's this big treasure chest at the end of all of these, and you get a cool thing at the end of it. So I know that the next game, Rise of the Tomb Raider, which is coming out later this year on Xbox and then early next year for PC, is going to focus a bit more on that, and I'm super excited because that's way more of my jam. But in terms of what it does with like combat and all that stuff, I think this game is superior to Uncharted, just because it feels way more fair, in the sense that Uncharted, like near the end of the Uncharted games, they just start throwing enemies at you that are bullet sponges, and you just shoot them like 7 times in the head, and they still don't die. You're shooting them in the head, right? But then, like, they have so much armor and shit on them that they are just lumbering towards you, and there's wave after wave, and there are multiple times, especially in Uncharted 3, and there's evidence of this if you go back and watch my Let's Play, of just montages of me dying and dying and dying, because the amount and numbers and density of enemies they throw at you is just a little bit unfair, in my opinion. And I think Tomb Raider does a really good job of balancing that out. Not only do you have like a greater variety of weapons, but there's also more environmental stuff. So there's barrels filled with oil that will explode if you hit them. So if you see a bunch of guys near one, you can basically take them out really quickly using that. You have a shotgun, like a rifle, and a bow and arrow and a pistol. So like, already that's way more options than you have in an Uncharted game, and it allows you a much greater level of like choice of how you want to take enemies down, and you can like be stealthy with the bow, and it just feels more of a fair, fun, better combat experience. So I actually kind of prefer this to Uncharted 3. Uncharted 2 is probably my favourite of the series, and it's close to that, but I really, really like this game. It's so much fun, and I should have got to it way sooner. It was sitting on my PC backlog forever, and I was like, you know what, the new game's coming out.
Yeah, you started a bit of it a long time ago, hadn't you?
I did, yeah, back when I got my PC in 2013, I played like the first couple of hours and just never continued with it. I really should have, because it's fucking awesome. It's so, so good. And yeah, super looking forward to the next one. So, that is the video games that we've been playing. That's going to be the segment. So I guess join us in a little bit where we are going to be going through some of your emails and answering some of your questions. So don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. It is time for some emails. Before I get on with those, it's a bit of an emergency, MBZ.
Is it? What's happening?
I went to our email account.
Uh-huh.
We're running low.
Oh no!
We are running really, really low. So it would be really great if any of you out there have any thoughts or questions or little anecdotes that you'd like to email into the show, and obviously our email address is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. We would really appreciate a boost. Like,
yeah,
one big boost will last us, an eternity. But
yeah,
it
helps.
We need that boost.
Indeed.
Our sugar levels are low. So anyway, on to the first email from Robert. Hey guys, Robert from New Jersey again. It's been a while. I'm finally catching up with your podcast episodes, and I just finished listening to your thoughts on Symphony of the Goddess. I'm looking to attend in October when they're playing in New York City, and I wanted to know if either of you had any tips on maximizing the experience. Obviously bringing my 3DS is a given, but do you have any thoughts on things like where to sit, getting to the venue early, stuff like that? I want to make sure I make the most of it. Maybe other listeners who are interested in going will benefit as well. Thanks so much, guys. Love the podcast.
All right, Robert. Well, we had a really good time when we went to the Symphony of the Goddess, and obviously we talked about it on the show and did our, I guess, pseudo podcast from the venue itself. And obviously, like, the stuff we were doing there is not a lot of things you're going to have to worry about because we were vlogging ourselves and recording ourselves and like paying more attention to that, I guess, than like lots of stuff around us. Bally, do you have any tips here? Obviously, he should bring his 3DS and have that street pass on the go.
I mean, we've been to lots of concerts in the past, MBZ,
yes.
Where we've gotten there when the doors open, we've charged to the front, we've stood like waiting for hours upon hours just in order to get a good space. And in all honesty, like, this experience was nothing like that at all, because you have it's a pre-booked seat, or it certainly was in our case, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
So whether you get there with 5 minutes to go or an hour to go, you've got your seat. You just have to get a bit of luck with not having an incredibly tall person in front of you, I guess.
Right, that could be a little bit annoying, I guess.
True.
Although in this case, it is music, and so what my parents were telling me is, like, when people go to the opera or go to places where they're just playing concert music, a lot of people will just close their eyes and listen, as opposed to, having to look up to see if anything's going on. Because most of the time when it comes to that stuff, nothing else is happening aside from just the people playing on stage. The difference here is, of course, you have the big screen showing different parts from the different Zelda games as they play it, and so yes, to some degree, it doesn't matter a huge amount if there's someone big in front of you, but also, in this case, it might be nice to not have that because of the stuff that is going on. So.
Yeah, and I found the screen was so high up that even if someone was in front of you, you can should be able to see it.
Yeah.
And I definitely spent more time looking at the screen than looking at the orchestra itself. And I thought that was the best bit of the whole thing. Actually, was the fact that they were mixing the music in with a montage of cutscenes and gameplay and of loads of different games. So yeah, it was a really good experience, but it was a pretty slick, well-run event in general. I found it was all very smooth. I think.
Yeah, I mean, security is definitely tight there, and even to the degree of they're not going to let you take any kind of camera inside if they see you using it, as we rudely found out very quickly. Where I walked trying to get some B-roll footage for the video, and a guard stopped me and was like, "I'm gonna have to take you to a room and take this thing away from you." And then we're like, "No, we're not that stupid. We're not gonna record inside." Obviously, if you have a phone or something, they can't stop people taking pictures with their phones, but you probably shouldn't do that in the venue itself, especially when they're playing, because
we did a couple, but before it started.
Yeah, and just made it obvious that it's a selfie or something that you're taking, so that people don't come and try and take you down, because I don't.
Okay, without nowhere.
I'm not sure. I'd be really interested to see if Nintendo decides to put out a Blu-ray or a DVD of the Symphony of the Goddess thing.
I think the fact that they're so strict on video footage would suggest that they probably are.
Maybe.
And I think something like that would probably sell quite well, so it's definitely in their interest.
But you would think they would have done it by now if they were going to do it. I mean, they started these in 2011.
That's true. Maybe they just they like having the option.
Yeah, I think they don't want a bastardization of someone's recorded footage, very shaky cam with not a good microphone being thrown up on YouTube, and certainly those exist. There are people who have managed to pull it off and record the whole thing, which I wouldn't advise doing. But I just feel like they want people to come there and have the real experience of listening to the music in person, and it's a great experience, really.
It's weird though, because for those who don't know, I've done a course in video journalism. A master's in video journalism, and so I've done a lot of sort of out and shooting, out and about, interviewing people, all this kind of thing. And it's very interesting seeing how different sort of security guards and people respond to different equipment. And what I've always found is that if you don't have a tripod, no one ever cares at all. But the second you get out a tripod, they think you are trying to make the next documentary to bring down the state or something. They freak out the second you have a tripod. It's so funny. They're always like, "We'll need to report you, we'll need to move you on," and all these things. And there's large chunks of a city like London, for example, where you're just not allowed to film. They're gradually getting to the stage where you're going to need passes just to film the outside of particular buildings.
That's crazy.
It's mental.
Absolutely crazy.
So yeah, they were quite quick to apprehend us, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. In terms of getting to the place early, it's really good if you're interested in getting merchandise and stuff, because they certainly had lots of stuff that you could buy, and the queue for that was pretty long. So
yeah, they had a specific Majora's Mask T-shirt.
Yeah, it was a T-shirt, and there was a poster for Majora's Mask as well, and I believe you could get...
Not the game.
No, but you could get could you get the 3DS itself? I can't remember. I think that the special edition 3DS might have been there, and maybe in the New York venue they'll have more stuff there. But in London they had just the small selection of stuff. There was quite a big queue for it, so I would advise, if you are interested in buying any of that stuff, that you get there early so that you have time to get it. I'm not sure if they were selling stuff after the fact. I don't think they were, so really before is the only time for you to do that. So, yeah, I think that's really the big deal. And probably, if you're going to be street passing, then you're going to be getting way more than we did, because we had to do all these other things and, like, only get to our street pass when we had a break. But you will get thousands and hundreds of street passes. So, yes, take advantage of that situation if you're someone who usually doesn't get many. So, yeah.
So we have a couple of questions that are sort of the same point, but I'll just read both of them out first, I think. So the first one's from Nagi. Would just like both of your extended opinions on voice acting in the Zelda series and your stance on it being included in Zelda Wii U. The only thing I can say is that a Newman neglecting voice acting might become a deal breaker for me personally. Like, think about Witcher 3, but with literal text boxes for all of the dialogue and no comprehensible voices. So that's Nagi's opinion. And then we've also got an email from Colin, which is similar. Hello, MBZ and Bally. A few podcasts ago, you had answered my email about whether or not I should get Metroid Other M. I did indeed get that game, and overall I thought the game was a bit meh. The only thing that was very interesting was the choice to have voice acting in the game. Sure, the voice acting could have been better, especially Samus, but it was still great to see these characters have a voice and interact with each other. This had got me thinking, what if Nintendo added voice acting to its first-party games? I believe that hearing actual dialogue from these characters would make much more of an impact to the game than reading it in a speech bubble or from gestures. Anyway, to do this today almost seems really backwards. If Star Fox 64 did not have voice acting, would Pepe's line, "do a barrel roll," really have stuck with all of us? I know they spoke about this on RFN, but I'd love to hear voice acting in Zelda U/NX. I really think it is about time Link got a voice, or at least Zelda. What do you guys think? Should future Nintendo games get voice acting? Bally, just in case you were wondering, I am from Los Angeles, but I currently live in Washington, D.C. So thanks very much for that, Colin. It's always good to know.
Yes, indeed.
So voice acting, NBZ.
Voice acting.
Yes
it's
or
a
no?
Big topic. It's interesting because Colin's asking, like, should they be in all Nintendo's first-party games? And I'm thinking, like, Nintendo's first-party lineup, there are games that voice acting would make sense in, but there are also a lot of games where it just doesn't at all. So the Mario series is one where it's like, I don't think voice acting does anything in that realm.
There's a bit of it in chunks of Sunshine.
Yeah.
And I thought it gave that game quite a lot of character.
It was also god-awful, but sure.
But it was god-awful in a charming way, I found. I really did like it,
I think it's just god-awful in a god-awful way, quite frankly. So, but yeah, I think, like, there are a lot of Nintendo's games where it doesn't make a lot of sense, and for that reason, like, things like Pikmin or things like Mario or I don't know, like there are quite a few examples, they're not coming to my brain right now, don't. And then on the other hand, there are franchises they have which is like, why haven't they done this yet? And certainly Zelda is one that most people rag on. And Nagi's example of The Witcher, and if that game had no voice acting, is kind of, I mean, it makes some sense, but also The Witcher is much more of a story-driven game than Zelda ever has been. And so I'm not sure the example holds up that well, but yeah, it would be fucking weird if that game was literally just having to read words on a screen as opposed to people saying them. And if you're thinking about, like, the comparisons people are making between what we've seen of Zelda Wii U and of The Witcher 3, you start to think, yeah, we're going to have this big world with probably lots of NPCs, and if we're just encountering people who are going like oogly oogly doo, or weird things that guy in, what's his name, in Wind Waker who sells the items, Beedle.
Beedle.
Yeah, and he does his weird thank you and weird shit like that.
That's spot on.
Yeah, I'm a Beedle voice actor. Give me a call, Nintendo. So yeah, you do come to feel like, okay, maybe they should get their act together here and get voice acting in. I think Zelda is the one where it has to happen, really. That is the key franchise for Nintendo. What do you think, Bally?
I think it would definitely be a lot better with voice acting, but I think it would work absolutely fine without. I mean, arguably, Wind Waker is one big open world with plenty of NPCs, and you will, like you said, walk up to them and they'll say their one thing or not say anything at all, and they will have their text box. And I don't think it felt particularly out of place, but I certainly think that a game like Zelda Wii U or NX or whatever the hell that game is going to come out on, it would be refreshing. It would be something new. It'd just be that extra, cherry on top that a series like Zelda could really do with. And I would actually come out and say that I would keep Link mute and give everyone else a voice. I don't know if you would agree or disagree.
Yeah, I agree with Link staying mute. I think there is a pitfall to some degree when you go for a main character like him and try and... Because the thing with Link is that he is really the avatar for the player in many senses. And so giving him a defined character is not really that easy. The thing with The Witcher is Geralt is a character. Obviously, The Witcher is based on a series of novels, Polish novels, and he is, a creation, and he has his own motivation and his own thoughts, and he's a developed person. And so it makes sense when you're playing that game for him to speak and him to, give opinions and things like that. Whereas Link doesn't feel like that sort of well-rounded individual. And there's also the danger of giving him a voice that doesn't make sense for people and that people are turned off and put off by. And the way they did it with Samus in Other M is certainly like...
I was going to mention that. Surely that's exactly like what you were saying. It's the main character, the protagonist, given a voice who was previously mute, and then it really just sort of divided everyone.
Yeah, it
Did you like it?
I think they had to do it for the story they were telling, and I understand why they did, but the problem is it didn't hit, and my only fear with Nintendo going to voice acting is whether it is going to work well or not, because they have such little experience doing it, and obviously back in the day, on PlayStation 1 and all these, old games, the voice acting was terrible, but that was because these companies were finding their feet and they were trying to figure out who these voice actors, and the role of voice acting in a video game wasn't established back then, so no one really knew what they were doing. And I think that Nintendo, even in 2015, find themselves in that same position as those people back in 2000, 2001. So because of their lack of experience and knowledge in this area, I just have a fear that they're going to try and do something like that and then massively fail, and it's going to negatively impact the game. And I think for a lot of people, Other M could have been a better game had they not done that, had they kind of left voice acting on the table and not approached it, which it's risky. So yeah, it's a tough thing to try and balance. I think for me, the way that Nintendo has done well with voice acting is when it's more of a goofy kind of off-the-cuff thing. I think the best game that they've had voice acting in is Kid Icarus Uprising. That game is super fourth wall breaking and just very conversational and chatty and comedic, and I think that the stuff that they did localizing it was fantastic. Pit's voice actor sounds super like 90s cartoon and that kind of stuff, and usually if that was to be in a more serious game it wouldn't make any sense, but in the context of what they do with Kid Icarus, it's really good. I really like it, and there are funny lines in there, and the interactions between the characters with Palutena and Pit and everyone, it's just world building and world fleshing out that isn't too serious but perfectly fits into that environment. And the worry with Zelda is that as it's a more serious game, I don't know how they would approach that. So yeah, those are my feelings on Link.
It'll be interesting, but I strongly predict that they won't go for voice acting, to be honest. I think it would be surprising, personally, for the next Zelda.
Yeah, I also think that they're going to be raked over the coals for it if they don't.
Oh, there will be hell to pay, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I was even looking back, I can't remember when or why I was doing this, but a review of Twilight Princess, and they even back then were bringing up the fact, hey, this is really weird that there's no voice acting in this game at all, and that they're just using text boxes. And since then, there has been another mainline Zelda, and still no voice acting. In a game which, really, Skyward Sword, the most cinematic and story-driven of the Zeldas in many senses.
Yeah.
Like, you can imagine Girahim having this amazing, like, hammy voice actor who just, like, kind of pantomime villain, and they could have really, you know, made something of that.
And I mean, yeah, they gave him a voice, and there's loads of laughing and chuckles and coughs and splutters, but there's no, you know, words coming out of his mouth. It's all...
Yeah. It's such a strange situation.
So they're creating a character through a voice, but not having them say anything. And Nintendo do that with, like, Mario, of course, and loads of other characters. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's weird.
I'm sure this is an issue that will come up again.
Because I'm sure Nintendo won't do it, and then we're going to have to discuss why.
We're going to have to heat up those coals and get raking.
Yes, indeed.
So our last question this week is from Alex. Hi MBZ and Bally. In my last email I asked for the best place to start with Zelda. I recently came across Ocarina of Time 3DS in a second-hand store and picked it up. In your Backlog Club on Minish Cap you mentioned difficulty and the game not informing you of the correct way forward. There were times so far in the game where the puzzle is not obvious, such as walls you can walk through. I agree that some elements of a Zelda game should force you to talk to random NPCs in order to obtain information that will assist you on your quest. But a godsend for me with Ocarina of Time 3DS was the inclusion of hint movies which assisted you when you could not work out specific puzzles. These were really helpful when I was completely lost. My question for you to discuss is, what do you think of inclusions like these in video games? These hint movies were completely optional and could be accessed upon death or viewing a specific stone in the overworld. Keep up the great podcast.
Well, it's very interesting that this email comes up on the episode that you are playing Ocarina of Time, Bally. I think that's happened before with another game.
Yeah.
The timing just kind of, like, works itself out weirdly. Have you come across these hint stones at all, and have you used them yet?
I take it he means the Sheikah stones, and I couldn't even work out how to use them. And then I actually asked you about this, and I looked up online, and you'd have to actually get a mask in order to read what's on the Sheikah stones, right?
Right. Well, those aren't actually what he's talking about. There are separate stones in Ocarina, and I think they're not placed frequently. But I think there's one near your house in Kakariko Village, and I think there's one at the Temple of Time. I can't remember exactly where they are, but they're little kind of cubby holes that Link crawls inside of. And it will give you a short kind of video of, like, what you should be doing next and where you should be going next. And I think to address, like, some of your complaints from earlier on in the episode, that probably would be quite helpful for you when you're thinking, like, oh, this game doesn't handhold you that much. And I think that's probably why they put it in.
Yeah, so. That's interesting, because obviously it's put in for the 3DS version. And I do believe those videos get saved up, like, in your options menu, so you can, like, just access it at any time.
Yeah.
I've not been using those, I just know of them. I definitely did crawl in a couple of those earlier in the game, but I've not seen any for quite a while, actually. But yeah, no, I think they're good. They're a neat addition. I think the like shoehorning in an actual video of what to do next is maybe a bit strong at times, and that seems like a very un-Nintendo thing to do, like shoehorning in a whole video. But I can appreciate why it might be quite nice. And I guess it just saves you looking up a video online anyway. It's just putting a video in the game, because there's so many times where I'm stuck and I'll look for an actual video online of how to do something. So I have mixed feelings on that. But yeah, I've not used them particularly.
Yeah, I think it's really, for Zelda anyway, this is Nintendo's solution to the Super Guide, and that's something obviously that they started using in the Wii era when, you know, a lot of non-gamers started to play their games, and obviously New Super Mario Brothers and other games where you can basically watch it be played for you and get it done by the system itself as opposed to you having to play that part. I think for Zelda that would be a very difficult thing to pull off, and so the best way for them to do that would be these like hint videos which show you the area you're supposed to go to, but don't put full power on, you know, the game doing it for you itself, but saying like kind of not giving you a nudge, more of like a shove in the right direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have nothing against these, because fundamentally, if you don't want to use them, then you don't have to. They're not shoved in your face. They're not, exploited. They're off to the side. And if you're really stuck and you don't know what to do and you're kind of down to your last straw, I mean, in 2015, honestly, most people are going to go online and look it up anyway before they even think about using the in-game help. But especially if you're like a younger kid and you don't have as easy access to the internet, or even like you don't really know where to go to find stuff like that, then these things are very helpful, and I think they're certainly created in mind for the younger audience who perhaps would have a tougher time making their way through a game like Ocarina, which, as you've even said, you have had issues figuring out where you need to go.
But having said that, I mean, like I said, I did do sort of, the Forest Temple, the Fire Temple without a guide, and it took me maybe like an hour and a half each dungeon to do those, but when I came out, I was like, wow, I'm really chuffed with myself. I actually did that without looking at a guide, and I'm quite bad for that at times with games where I will, bang my head up against a wall and try and avoid a guide, especially for an absolute classic, like Ocarina of Time, where I know that this is I only have one chance to look at this dungeon blind,
Right.
So I want to try and enjoy that to the maximum, perhaps. So that's sort of my thought process on it. But you're right. I mean, if you're like a 13, 14-year-old, never played Zelda before, and you've just picked up a 3DS and you want to play a classic like Ocarina of Time, you're right. I do agree with you. These videos and little things like that to make it a bit more streamlined are really important. And when you play the original Ocarina of Time compared to this remake, or even between Wind Waker and Wind Waker HD, there are simple things that can be done to these experiences that just make them so much more fun to play.
Yeah. They I think they just overall, that 3D remake is just a brilliant reassessment of that game. And obviously they changed some stuff with the UI, and obviously like stuff on the touchscreen is great, especially when you're going to get to the water temple and having to change the iron boots, because let me tell you, trying to do that on the Wii U Virtual Console, or the Wii Virtual Console even, going into the menu every single time, and that menu is slow, man. It takes time to like rotate itself to the right thing, switch off, switch on. You're going to have a much, much nicer experience in that water temple. So
it's still going to be hard, but anyway.
Yeah, it will be. Is that it, Bally?
I think that is all we have time for this week. But like I said at the top of the segment, we're in a bit of an emergency. We need some more emails. So please send all your emails, all your questions, all your criticisms, all your ideas, anything you want to say, to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. We love reading all of them, and hope to have plenty more stocked up for the next few shows.
Yes, indeed. I think that we are going to get on out of here to our next segment.
Are you ready, MBZ, to be tested?
I don't know, Bally. It's gonna be a trial by fire.
It's time for my revenge.
It is Revenge of the Ballies. So let's get on over to our last segment, and we'll see you guys in a second. Alright everyone, welcome back to the show for our final segment, and this week we are returning to an old favourite. It is of course the Jukebox, where Bally and I go back and forth trying to guess each other's selections of music that we've prepared beforehand. And this time it's Bally's turn to try and trick me with his selections. I was very crafty in the last one with that Konami Crazy Races, which was actually kind of a Castlevania song, and tripped Bally up.
That was not fun, but it was
no,
interesting.
it wasn't.
Yeah,
that's the point. You gotta, be nasty. You gotta be
cruel to be kind.
Exactly, that's the point. So, Bally, you have the floor. John, take it away.
Yeah, so let's just jump in with the first song.
Alright, that's an interesting one. I should also mention, if you want to play along at home, feel free to do that, and try and guess alongside me. Bally, of course, the maestro here, knows exactly what game this is. So here's my thoughts. Initially, I was feeling like this is kind of like a homely kind of song, getting like...
It's pretty homely
vibes to it, like I'm in a house or something. So I was thinking like some kind of like sim-ish game.
Yeah.
So I was going around like Harvest Moon kind of area, but then I'm thinking like maybe from the GameCube game, but I feel like because I used that last time, it's not going to be that. And I haven't played any other Harvest Moon game, so I'm going to take Harvest Moon off the table. I'm then moved towards thinking something... maybe Phoenix Wright-ish, so some kind of like adventure-style game in some sense, and I leant towards Phoenix Wright. I don't know why, but there are a lot of Phoenix Wright games that I've played, so trying to nail down one of them is very hard, especially if it's like one of these songs that doesn't really seem that familiar to me, like... And the audio quality is also quite high, so I'm kind of questioning whether that would be a Phoenix Wright game because it's the DS, and the DS I don't think has a sound chip that is that good. So this is a hard one. Yeah, I don't know. Any tips here for me, Bally? Are you going to just leave me hanging?
Just quite. I don't want to give anything away, really. But
am I going down the right kind of track?
No.
Okay, well...
but, we're gonna need an answer.
Alright, well... I am going to say... I feel like it could be like a Wii game or something. Or like some... Let's say... Wii Fit. That seems like a game that is somewhere in this range of like chill music that kind of sounds homely to some degree. Let's go Wii Fit.
Okay. The correct answer is Wii Sports.
Oh my god!
That is really, really close.
Oh.
And this is actually the bowling theme.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, I'm surprised that didn't stick out more in my mind.
Yeah, I don't know. When you started going off on Phoenix Wright, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realise it was this difficult, but...
I mean, it did kind of have that tone to it, but I wasn't going to go down the Phoenix Wright route because of the quality of the audio. It's definitely like console quality, right? It's not...
Yeah.
The DS stuff has a little bit more kind of ruggedness to it, whereas this felt much more clean. And so I was like, oh, it must be like a Wii game then. So I just scrolled down my backlogger and I was like, okay, one of these Wii Sports games, maybe it's Wii Fit or something. Because it didn't sound like a Wii Sports Sorry?
It could totally work in Wii Fit, though. If you're
Yeah,
right.
it could do.
Yeah.
It could do. It could be any of those games, really. Wii Play didn't make sense to me, but I went with Wii Fit, and tiny little bit off. I'm glad I at least made a guess that was educated enough and got close enough.
It was very close. It was
Yeah.
closer than Phoenix, right?
Yeah.
For sure. But yeah, this game in general just got a lot of chilled music, especially the golf and the bowling. I'd say less so the tennis, baseball that are more intense sports, but it's a good soundtrack all around.
I don't know. I just feel like the stuff in Wii Sports and kind of the Wii games in general never stood out to me. Like, despite the fact that obviously we played this game for hours and hours and hours, I couldn't even nail down 100% that was like the bowling thing from Wii Sports. Speaks to perhaps its forgettableness. You know, it's not very memorable music. It's nice kind of background stuff, but because it's nice background stuff, it doesn't stick out in your mind. So yeah, that one didn't quite hit me, unfortunately. But hey, what are you gonna do? Wii Sports is a fun game, so yeah, cool.
Well,
All right,
let's see if you get this next one.
let's hope. Let's get a point on the board. Interesting. So, this sounds like a handheld game to me. If I'm going from the audio sound point perspective, whatever you want to say. It sounds handheld. Now, my question in my brain was GBA or DS, because those are the two that kind of I gravitate towards. I'm thinking, all right. I look at my GBA collection, I'm thinking, no, I don't think any of these fit. I don't think any of these games sound like that. So I'm going to narrow it to a DS game. And that's hard because there's a lot of DS games out there. But it sounded like it had a Mario twang to it. I was feeling some Galaxy vibes in there, but obviously this isn't a Galaxy game. I was feeling some Mario Kart vibes in there. So that made me think maybe Mario Kart DS is a potential thing. There's also New Super Mario Brothers, but I don't think that quite fits. And I think that was out before Galaxy. Yes, it was. So my brain is going in the Mario direction. And I don't quite think it's DS, because I do think that came out before Galaxy as well. So it would have to be a post-Galaxy game that came out on DS or maybe on 3DS. And now my brain is really hurting, and this is hard to figure out. So it could be Mario Kart on 3DS, which is Mario Kart 7. But I'm going to go with Mario Kart 7 on 3DS. Though the audio quality sounds to me like it should be higher if it's a 3DS game. But that's what I'm going to go with.
So this was actually Donkey Kong Jungle Beat on the GameCube.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow, okay, I could not have been more wrong, but I know now where my brain should have gone, because those Galaxy-esque movement in the music were because this is an EAD Tokyo game.
Ah,
really
right, okay.
That's why that was
yeah.
like coming up. That's crazy. Now I think about it. EAD Tokyo's first game was Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. So that should have popped up in my brain straight away, but it didn't. Wow.
Yeah, this was
and this is a
Sky
GameCube
Garden from Donkey Kong Jungle Beat.
That's really interesting because it does have that kind of tone of music that is from one of the Sky Galaxies, I think, in Mario Galaxy. So that's kind of crazy. I'm not sure who the composer is on this, but yeah, it's one of those games that I played through. Obviously, for my channel, I did a full Let's Play of this game, so you'd think like I would have remembered some of the music. But I think the hard thing about Donkey Kong Jungle Beat is you're really focusing on using the bongos to create your own sound. And obviously, that sound isn't like the crux of the game because it's not Donkey Konga. We're not like playing along to a song, but it does contribute to maybe the focus being taken away from the music somewhat. So I don't know. Interesting.
If you listen really carefully, at one point you can actually hear a bongo being hit.
Oh, really?
I just noticed that listening back through, but yeah.
Oh, do you think you grabbed this piece of music from like a YouTube video of someone who was playing it?
Maybe.
And you could hear the bongos going at the same time. Maybe that'd be interesting. But yeah, I think like I enjoyed this game. I think it has a lot of issues, but it's still fun, and it was like a good first outing for EAD Tokyo to kind of like get their feet wet and start trying some new ideas with a platformer. And lots of stuff from this game ended up in Galaxy, like those floating pieces of water that you can like swim through and like they just float around in space. That stuff was in this game before it was in Galaxy. Lots of cool ideas. I know you probably want to play this at some point.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just need to get the old bongos out, dust them off, and give this game a go. But yeah, for sure. And it's one of those games that everyone kind of, at the time, it wasn't that much of a big deal, but it seems to have aged really well, and everyone thinks, oh, that was actually a really quirky thing that worked well at that point in time. And
yeah, it's definitely flawed, but I think there are a lot of interesting things, especially for the DNA of where that studio went afterwards. And as I said, like, my brain with this music went instantly to Galaxy, and that just speaks of how kind of ingrained that stuff was from the outset with with the AD Tokyo. So very interesting, very cool. All right. Well, I guess 0 for 2, Bally. It's not going well for me.
Let's make it 0 for 3.
Let's try. All right, let's go for the next song. Well, Bally, you've chosen a song that is both so obvious and yet so fucking perplexing that I don't know where to go. So this is obviously like very kind of beach themed. It's very kind of, Hawaiian in a sense, and very upbeat, and very kind of like, hey, it's like sunny over here right now. And so that made me think like,
there's a lot of sunny games out there.
Yeah, it made me think like, Mario Sunshine. But obviously I've not played that, so that would be against the rules, right? I mean, I've technically played it, but right? I hope.
Right.
So I was like, okay, what other games are like that and very happy and upbeat? And I think, like, I went to the Mario Kart games last time, but there are certain tracks in those games that obviously, Peach Beach and shit like that, which is kind of happy and upbeat. But that seems like, I don't know, it seems like a little bit of a nasty trick to pull one of those. I was thinking perhaps in the vein of like Pilot Wings-esque stuff. Or maybe you're even going to be as much as a bastard to be like Wii Sports Resort is a thing. So I don't know if that's the length to which you would
Wii
go.
Sports Resort in one
Yeah,
thing.
that would be nasty. That
never
sounds
know.
like it would be a horrible thing to do to me. So that's floating around. Again, I'm not going to trust my instincts when it comes to like sound quality here, because as we found out last time, I tried to do that and I thought it was a handheld game and it clearly wasn't. So that feels like it's screwing me over. I'm also gravitating maybe to Monkey Ball. Monkey Ball seems like it would have some levels which would have an upbeat kind of happy clappy tune there. That would mean I'd have to nail it down to either a GameCube or a Wii one. I know there's a DS one, but I definitely don't think this is a DS game that you're getting at with me here. So this is hard. This is really tough. Again, Bally, you've just put me in a corner.
Out of everything you've said, at one point you were warm.
Oh, okay, so that's the clue here.
That's the clue. So out of everything you've said, something in there was ticking my boxes.
Oh no, this is bad, because now I'm gonna choose something that's gonna be wrong, and then I'm gonna have to reconcile. So I'm going to say that you're not gonna be an asshole, and it's not gonna be Wii Sports Resort. Now this is contingent on you not being an asshole, which is, potential here, Valley. So I'm gonna put faith in you. I'm gonna cross it off the list. I feel like it could be a Mario Kart game. The problem there is there are like 3 that are candidates. I think 7, 8, and Wii are potential candidates here. And choosing any of those, maybe this course is in multiple versions. So again, Bally, you could be an arsehole here in many senses. So I am going to go with my gut, and I'm going to go with Monkey Ball, because I think that's just what is singing out to me. And the game I'm going to go with is the Wii game, which is Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz. And yeah, there's my guess. We'll see if you're an arsehole or not.
You are wrong, I'm afraid. And I believe you used Banana Blitz for me once in the past.
Oh god, I shouldn't have said that. I totally have used that game before.
So, and our current rules, we're not repeating games, so it's not that. The correct answer is Mario Kart 8.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I knew. Oh man, it had to be a Mario Kart.
In the first Grand Prix, it's called Water Park.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that really, because it did sound so familiar to me, and yet I thought that there was some room there for, some nonsense happening. You know what we really need to do is we need to have a list of all the games that have already been done, so that I don't trip over myself.
Yeah.
Because if I had remembered that, I would have not even gone for a Monkey Ball game. So, wow, that is, that threw me for a loop, Ballet. Again,
well,
you're doing your work here.
0 for 3. This is brutal. This is
not going well. It's a bad day out of me for the music.
Can you make it up with song 4?
I? All right, we'll see. Again, Ballet, you're giving me sounds that make me feel like I know exactly what it is, and yet have to struggle to reach into the recesses of my brain.
That was the theme of everything I was going for.
Oh, well, it's worked perfectly for you so far, I'm telling you what. So, initial thoughts were something Mario Party related. I think we may have done a Mario Party in the past, though. Now I'm thinking. I may have done Mario Party 4 before. I can't remember. This is the problem now, because we don't actually have a list of what we've done before.
Here's a hint. We have done Mario Party 4 before.
Okay. Well, there you go. So that's off the table. That was... In my brain, I was thinking, okay, this sounds very kind of like, on a board kind of music. And I was thinking, wait a second, this kind of sounds more like a specific character in Mario Party. And the character in Mario Party was Wario. And I was thinking, oh, that sounds very Wario, that music. Now, here's the problem in my brain is it a game in the Wario Land series, or is it a game in the WarioWare series? So this is like the junction that I've hit now, and I'm thinking, okay, so potentially this could be Wario Land 4 on GBA. Which we've both played, and I have a feeling that you may pick one of, something like that. But there's also the WarioWare games, and that sounds like kind of menu music for some of the mini games. The problem here is that there are a few WarioWare games. There's the original on GBA, there's Twisted, which is fantastic, and the Wii one, and the DS one. So there's 4 choices I have here. Again, going from audio quality, it's a little bit iffy, because as we found out before, that's not always going to tell me the correct choice. So I have to narrow it down to a handheld one. So I'm gonna. That's the problem. That the 3 of these are handheld ones. But it feels like the original one to me. Twisted has a shot, and it's really kind of a coin flip there. So I am going to say that this is the original GBA WarioWare Incorporated Mega Micro Game $! As it's written on the Wikipedia page. Yeah. So that's my guess.
I'm afraid that's incorrect.
Oh,
but I did
I
did like your logic, because the correct answer is Wario Land 4.
Are you serious? Oh my god, the theme of this whole thing is me like getting so close and then like going the other direction.
Toy block tower.
Wow.
And stepping back, I agree that is really tough, because that group of games has an incredibly similar style of music.
Yes.
And you're right, it does sound very Wario. So maybe that was a bit harsh.
Maybe, but again, this is the game. This is what we have to do.
This is the game. It is brutal for
wade through the waters. So far, what have I done? I've named Mario Kart 8 and failed to get it. I've named Wario Land 4 and failed to get it. And
you went for Wii Fit instead of Wii Sports.
I went for Wii Fit instead of Wii. So basically, Bally, I should be winning right now.
And you went for the wrong EAD Tokyo game for the other EAD Tokyo game.
Yep. It's all crumbling to pieces.
You come so close 4 times.
Every time I've gotten closer, Bally, I feel like we're almost there. I feel like maybe at the end I can pull one back.
I think you've got a chance to pull one back. So let's get on with song number 5.
Oh, Bally, I feel like that you have deliberately tried to be a tricky bastard in this one, but I feel like I may have it. I may
I
have
think you should
finally
have it. It
jumped
was,
over the post.
yeah.
So the first thing that popped into my head, obviously, Metroid Prime, and I know that that's not from Metroid Prime, because not only have I not actually played Metroid Prime, but the music went in a place which wasn't the right one. And so that leaves only one option, and that is, of course, the best Metroid Prime game,
Oh,
Metroid
God.
Prime Pinball, Bally. This is Metroid Prime Pinball.
Yes, it is Metroid Prime
There
Pinball.
we go, I got a point!
It is. It sounds like Samus Aran out on a Saturday night. Is how
It does,
sounds.
it
It's like it's the Talon 4 Overworld theme with
Yeah.
an extra injection of funk.
It really is, yeah. It's a really good soundtrack. Metro Prime Pinball is one of those games that I we got like from America. I think it was. I think it was like when my dad was over, he picked it up there. Or it was like sent over at some point at the same time I got Animal Crossing Wild World, and it was very notable because it had the GBA cartridge slot on the DS that could be used for a Rumble. Instead, you basically had the option to put in this rumble pack at the bottom, and so you would get that feedback that you usually get in a pinball machine or in other pinball games from the controller, but you'd have it on the DS, which was really cool. Did you own this game as well?
No,
Guy?
I didn't own it, and this is a game, having played Metroid Prime and loving games like Pokemon Pinball, I'd love to play this game because as far as I'm aware, it's got a lot of the same bosses and obviously remixes of the music like the one we just heard.
Yeah.
And I'd love to try it, so if that came to the eShop or I could borrow your copy, I'd love to have a go.
It sounds like a prime candidate for the eShop, actually, with the way that DS games are already up on the Virtual Console.
It's the only Metroid game that's not on the eShop.
Yeah, surprisingly enough, that is very true.
Other than Other M.
Right, of course.
They're the only two. But yeah.
Yeah, but I really like this game. It's super good, and it is the best Metro Prime game.
Blasphemy.
I do think that it's a very solid pinball, and as always, my dad was always better at it than I was, because it's just the nature of it. He's always good at pinball games, and I was fine, but nowhere near the ridiculousness that he was. So all the high scores and everything on that cartridge, they're all his. None of them belong to me. So yeah.
Did he
very
prefer
cool.
it to Pokemon Pinball?
I don't know. I think he probably spent a lot more time with Pokemon Pinball back in the day. That was the one where the scores were just stupid, like ridiculously stupid, and I didn't understand how they existed. But yeah, I think he had a good time with Metro Prime Pinball, and maybe we'll crack it out at some point again and have another go at it, because it's good fun. It's a really good fun game. So,
1 out of 5.
I got 1 out of 5, but I was also agonizingly
You were agonizingly
close on
close
so many
on
occasions. But hey, that's what happens sometimes.
I dangled that carrot just ahead enough. I think that was a good distance to dangle. It wasn't out of your league, but it was just kind of just grasping. It's just beyond your reach.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I guess that's it. Please do let us know if you played along at home, how you did. You can,
If you got 5 out of 5, I'll be very impressed.
Yeah, I will as well, because a lot of weird games thrown in there with some interesting choices of music, which kind of threw me off to some degree.
They're all pretty mainstream Nintendo games. That's the thing.
Yeah, it's true. I think Jungle Beat's one, which I think some people will have a hard time with, but
Yeah.
aside from that, yeah, the rest of them are pretty popular. So yeah, do let us know how you did. You can tweet us and let us know via Twitter. That's probably an easy way to do that. Where can they follow our podcast Twitter account, Ballet?
The podcast Twitter account is at TNL Podcast. That's at TNL Podcast. All the updates on the most recent episodes, any videos we've been doing, or that kind of thing, it'll all go on that Twitter feed. So it's a really good account to follow.
Indeed. You can also find us on the Twitters of our own accord. Mine is at Lordnbz, also Lordnbz on the Miiverse. How about you, Ali?
I'm at Ballyman91, BALLYMAN91, and that's also my name on the newly revamped, although I don't really understand the revamped, Miiverse.
Yeah, that happened, and I don't know what's up with it. It's super weird.
It allows you to keep a gaming log and draw pictures and all these things you could do before, but now it lists them all and it looks weird. But anyway.
Yeah, and it puts them in categories. I don't know.
Whoop-de-doo.
Whatever. The Miiverse, it's always strange. It will continue to become more strange. So let it do its thing, I guess.
Follow me on there. That'd be good.
Yeah. You can also send us some emails if you have some questions you'd like to ask us. Please do that. We're running out, and we'd love to get some more of your thoughts. If you have been listening to the podcast and you've never sent anything in, it's a great time to do it. Do it now, and let us know where you're from, all that good stuff, so Bally can stalk you. Where can people send their emails to, Bally?
Send your emails to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. We're always running out, and I think we're particularly running out at the moment, so we would appreciate
please do that.
And if it's your first time emailer, even better. We like hearing from new listeners as well.
Yes, indeed. You can get the show wherever, on iTunes. You can download us and subscribe to us. You can review us on iTunes as well. We haven't had one of those in a while. Be good to get another review up on iTunes. So if you have the time or patience, then that would be muchly appreciated. You can also get us on Stitcher. It's an app on other places, and we're on YouTube as well. So go there, find us. We're talking in your ear holes in many locations. Everywhere. So, yeah. Well, I think, Valley, that is going to close us out for this week's show. Thank you once again for joining me, and thank you for perplexing me with those tunes. They were nasty.
No problem. I'm sure you will have a nice lineup for me the next time the jukebox comes around.
The revenge will be sweet.
Oh, boy.
It shall. All right. Well, yes, once again, thank you for listening. We'll be back at you in a couple of weeks' time. Until then, see you guys next time. Goodbye.